Welcome to Old House Diaries, a digital preservation project whose goal is to keep old buildings alive by collecting and sharing the human stories associated with them. No one is going to be able to save all the old buildings that need to be protected, but we can preserve the stories and the cultural context that give old buildings and neighborhoods meaning.
We're standing at 2600 East Gray Street in Richmond, Virginia's historic Church Hill. This building, constructed in 1914, was designed by Marcellus Wright. Since 2007, it's been known as St. Patrick's Place, a condominium community with 11 units in the main building and 4 units in a building directly behind this one facing North 26th Street. To appreciate this place, we have to understand that for 138 years before it closed in 2004, St. Patrick's was a school that played an important part in the history of this community. The decision to build in the colonial revival style tells us something about the goals and aspirations of this school. You can see how it incorporates classical elements such as a pediment supported by columns and symmetrically balanced windows with a center door. Traditional architecture symbolizes things that last. By its very design, this building is a reflection of the values of the school. It projects substance and durability, and even though the school has closed, the building and the legacy of the school endure. The story of the school begins on September 3rd, 1866. That's when the Sisters of Charity opened a school for girls around the corner from here in the 100 block of North 25th Street, where Charity Square condos now stand. It was affiliated with the nearby St. Patrick's Church, founded 10 years earlier. Now think about this. Richmond, Virginia in 1866. That's 1 year after this city, the capital of the Confederacy, fell to the Union Army on April 3, 1865, bringing to an end the Civil War. The departing Confederate authorities ordered the tobacco factories and railroad bridges burnt. Fires raged, and 90% of the business district in walking distance from Church Hill was destroyed. The next day, President Lincoln arrived at the Port of Rockets, just below Libby Hill, not far from here. And less than 2 weeks later, President Lincoln was assassinated. The country was turned upside down. Richmond was in a shambles. And yet, the following year, St. Patrick's Female Academy opens on Church Hill. This is the same year that Baptist missionaries opened a school for newly freed blacks in a former slave jail in Chaco Valley, maybe a quarter of a mile from here. That school grows into Virginia Union University. With all the pressing issues of the day, it's remarkable to think about the educational advances made in this community at that time. The first St. Patrick's Academy was on North 25th Street, and it prospered for almost 50 years before it was moved to this location in 1914. At first it was girls only, as an inscription on the side of the building reminds us. In 1922, the male students moved here from the school on 25th Street. In 1925, a 2-story brick residence for the nuns was constructed behind the school building. Students were often sent there to wash windows in the convent as a punishment, or to use the kitchen convent stove to make flour paste to hold their books together. The school experienced explosive growth in the 1950s as a result of the post-World War II baby boom. This building could not contain all of its students, and so neighboring houses were used for classrooms. In 1957, St. Patrick's purchased the Third Presbyterian Church complex, 1 block north on the corner of 26th and Broad, for additional educational facilities. These were remodeled in 1961 to accommodate grade school children. We invited former students to return to St. Patrick's and share their memories of the school, the building, and the neighborhood. Samantha Good, a current resident of St. Patrick's Place, welcomed them back.
Good morning. I'm Samantha Good, or rather new resident of St. Patrick's, and welcome former students of St. Patrick's School. We're here today so you can share your history with me of your going to school here and your memories. Please come in. I want you to see the building. What was the neighborhood community like? How has it changed?
The what of the community?
The neighborhood?
The neighborhood? It looks the same. When you come back here, you feel at home. And my husband and I do come every year for the kind of like walk at Christmas, and it's so beautiful.
We are particularly interested in the building and how it functioned as a school, and our goal is to ensure it is preserved and that its origin as a school is remembered. Describe the school for me.
The school was just a wonderful place. It was like home. It was, everybody cared about you. And even coming in here today, you get that same feeling that it's just in the walls, it's there. And I am just so pleased that they did something constructive with it and didn't let it just go to waste.
How do you remember this room?
Margie, we are particularly interested in the building and how it functioned as a school. And our goal is to ensure it is preserved and that its origins as school remembered always. Describe the school for me as you remember it.
Okay. All the lower grades were on the first floor, and the high school was on the top floor. And we had the library up there. And there was a stairway right out here that went down to the basement. And we had a fully functional cafeteria. And the room on the other side was the length of the school, and that was where all the tables were when we sat to have lunch. At the end of the cafeteria, at the back of the school, there was the girls' restroom. I don't remember where the boys was. And a classroom down there, and a big closet. And in the hallway between the room where we ate and the kitchen, there were water fountains. And that's about all I remember. We had wonderful lunches though.
Do you remember the enrollment the last year you were here?
There were 28 people in my class.
Okay. How do you remember this room?
This room, it was a classroom, and I'm sure at one point in time I was in it, as I went here for all 12 years. And we just thought the kids on the upper floor up there were so much older than we were. Before I knew it, I was there. This room I don't remember in particular, but they were all very much the same.
Blackboards.
Yeah, lots of blackboards.
Where were there other buildings associated with the school? Where are they now?
Okay. Well, of course, you know where the convent was behind us. There was a building next door to the school. It's torn down now. And we had classrooms in there. I used to go there. Or I can't remember what it was. But anyway, I don't even remember when they tore that down. But we had a play yard in between where we played during recess. Recess. We had another building that was bought later, and it's 2 or 3 blocks down the street. Great, big, huge house on the southeast corner. Do you know which one I'm talking about? It's very different. It's really big, and it's a yard on the side. In fact, my grandmother used to take me to garden parties there. Every boy had white gloves and dressed up.
It's hard to imagine it now, but the neighborhood used to ring with the voices of children at play, the sight of elaborate processions on holy days, and medieval-looking nuns in starched linen headdresses and flowing black gowns. We were curious about the buildings in the neighborhood associated with St. Patrick's. One of those is the White Taylor House, 2 blocks east at 2717 East Gray Street. It served as a grade school.
Okay. The address here is 2717 East Grace. It is known as the White Taylor House. It was built in 1839, so it is pre-Civil War. It is Greek Revival. And we're going to go inside and take a look around.
Monica Schilling greeted us on our tour. She was so nice to invite us in and tell us about her home, a commanding antebellum Greek revival that
Size, actually.
So you had classroom desks in
We
here
had
and
desks
there?
hand to hand, side by side in here, right?
Boys and girls?
Yes.
And one nun running around monitoring the whole thing.
You didn't mess with her.
This house at 214 North 26th Street was a kindergarten. A building once stood on a portion of the existing parking lot behind the school.
Bernie, this is being filmed in the hallway. How do you remember this area?
Okay, we always came in the front door. I remember coming in the front door, and what I remember was the grade school, with some exceptions, always being on the first floor. In the high school, after you finish your 8th grade, you moved upstairs to the high school. Back then, we didn't have like elementary, middle school. It was always kind of grade 1 to grade 8 on the first floor, high school classes up there. With that being said, there was a building right next door where the parking lot is now that is no longer there. That was a building that had classrooms in it, that had a pot-belly stove in it right next. The school owned it, and it was part of the school. And there was some classrooms in that, plus the larger one down at, I think, a corner of 28th and Grace.
So there were other buildings associated with the school?
Right. Also, obviously, it's called the Belfry Condos up on the corner, which used to be a Presbyterian church. That was purchased later in the school's existence, and that was used for classrooms and an auditorium.
Kathleen, we're going to wrap up our tour of St. Patrick's and the buildings outside of the school that were used for overflow purposes. And I understand that when you graduated in 1953, you had gone from kindergarten to senior year in that one building. Exactly. But after you, apparently there was, the baby boomers came along and there was an explosion of students, and so they had to start using, other buildings that were nearby. And we've seen some of those today, but apparently there was one right here. You do recall a house being here that...
I do recall there was a house here, because it was a narrow, these walls were not here, so there was a narrow area that went back almost to the alley, and there was a concrete basketball court back there with just back on the street. And that's where we were practicing basketball.
So the basketball team practiced out here, but then for recess, you all were playing out in the street?
We played in the street. They blocked off the street.
Which street? Or streets?
25th.
No, this would be 26th Street.
Between Grace and Broad.
Okay.
And this block, the 26th block, I think they blocked off both streets.
Well, that's a pretty big playground.
Yes, it was.
Can you tell us anything about the surrounding area? Any history on the houses? Any stories?
Sure. Well, my brother and our friends, we just roamed this neighborhood. We just lived in this area all the time. This house on the corner here was purchased sometime in the early 50s by the local Jehovah's Witness church. In order for them to, we assume, to wage war on the nuns over here. They were very aggressive in their activities, and they used to put out pamphlets of how the nuns would cook and eat the children over here.
Another building associated with St. Patrick's is in the 2200 block of East Grace Street. Now an ecumenical center called Richmond Hill, it was once a convent and a rival girls' school called Monte Maria Academy.
Our grandparents stayed here after their mother died.
The daughters.
The daughters, stayed here with the nuns. It was a boarding school. And They spoke fondly of it, I think. I can't remember.
About what years are we
My
talking about?
grandmother, our grandmothers. Mine was 5 years younger than theirs.
And what years?
And
What
it
age
was-
would she be?
Well, her mother died in 1895. So, sometime between 1895 and probably 1896, they moved into here. I'm not sure. She was only 5 or 6 years old. And our grandmothers probably went there because they had started there. And my grandmother told me that they lived on 25th and Broad, off of Broad, between Broad and Marshall. And they had to walk to school. It's a very short distance. And that they would not walk on this side of the street because Mrs. Van Loo was still living and they were afraid of Mrs. Van Loo.
Oh, I see someone else does what I do, stare at this beautiful building. The Academy of the Visitation Monte Maria. Are you from this neighborhood?
I am.
Wonderful, so am I. I live at St. Patrick's and I'm Samantha Good.
I'm Tammy. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Tammy, everyone I've met in the year and a half I've been here, I have met on the street, standing in front of one of these beautiful buildings, gazing at it. And I find myself doing the same thing every time I go by. So I love it that you're doing the same thing. Look at those windows. This was built, I think, 1865, 66. And it ran for 80 years. And when it first opened, it was open to Christians, Catholics, and Jews. And it closed 80 years later, and then I think it was then considered a nun's convent. But it's a building that we really wish could just open its mouth and tell us wonderful stories. Do you find yourself doing that when you walk through the neighborhood?
I do. There are a
Wondering-
lot of beautiful old buildings.
Yes, just talk to me. Well, Monte Maria, goodbye for today, and I'll see you tomorrow.
The past and present continue to cross paths in St. Patrick's Place. Let's see how current residents have adapted the old school to contemporary living.
Hi, come in. This is one of the first converted condos that sold. Anyone want to share with me the history of what this room was when you went to school here?
It was a cafeteria.
It was the cafeteria where they prepared the food, and you would come in and go around that way, and I think you went through the line of, although I never actually ate the food from here because we had a bag lunch every day.
Yeah.
But I did have to come in here.
Delicious.
I did have to come in here and get the milk, so.
The milk refrigerator was here. The milk was always hot, never cold.
In bottles.
Okay, and you went around like
Little
this
bottles.
way and went through that way, is that right?
I think the line went around here, it's just like
Okay.
you grab a tray and go through there, and then you would go back out across the hall and eat.
What else was down here on this floor? Because when we came down the steps, you said that this partition wasn't there.
Well, I
That the
thought it was
hall was
hallway.
open all the way to the rear
All
of the
3
building.
floors, the corridor was open.
The corridor went from front door to the
I
back
think
door.
so.
Yes,
yeah.
it did. This wall was not here.
No, they were not here. That's what I was saying when we first looked in. I said, I remember it being much bigger, but now I can see it was bigger, yes.
What do you feel when you see this conversion?
Well,
That
it
was
doesn't
once
really look
your
like
Catholic
anything.
school.
It doesn't really look like anything I remember, but you're sad.
Okay.
I wanted to come in and see the old cafeteria.
Oh, hi Becky. Hello. Guys, come in. This is Becky who now owns this unit.
Yeah, it's been everything
Isn't this pretty?
Tell us about living in here. Did you have any idea what this building or this room was before you moved in?
I didn't, but I have met someone who went to school here and said that this was the reading room, so that would make sense it was the library. And he's probably, I guess, in mid-40s, and he was one of the last classes that came through here. And I had a housewarming party, and he came, he knew that I had moved in here, and he came in and he said, your kitchen was my reading room. My kitchen now. So, I just think it's really
As you can see, St. Patrick's School had an impact that extended far beyond what happened within its walls. It extended to the neighborhood. At this house at the corner of 28th and East Broad is a memorial that attracts curiosity every day. The urn in the front yard is dedicated to Chip Marco, who graduated from St. Patrick's School in 1958. He never lived in the neighborhood, but like so many other students we interviewed, he always thought of Church Hill as his home. When St. Patrick's Church was struggling to survive in the 1980s, he helped start the Irish Festival to raise money to ensure that it would remain a part of the community. The Irish Festival has grown to a huge event that attracts thousands each year to celebrate and appreciate this vibrant and historic community. I hope we've shown that buildings are more than bricks and mortar. They are alive with the spirit of those who built them and the stories of those who passed through them. Like people, buildings have character. Some are exuberant, some are restrained. Some begin life as one thing and end up as something else. Some are lost, some endure. It's up to us to see that old buildings survive and continue to help us understand where we've been and how we became who we are.